Thank you, Rebecca. I think our next speaker will nicely continue this topic, and we will move forward. The questions how we designers design today for challenges that lie ahead for future generations, how our practice should evolve taking into account global warming. Ian Pollock is assistant professor of art and director of graduate interaction designer program at California State University. And also he is digital artist whose work were exhibited nationally and internationally and also online. Ian Pollock, please welcome on the stage.
Is it working now? There you go.
I think so.
Okay. All right. So this is loud. So I'm going to try and follow all of these incredible talks, and it's a pretty daunting task. And usually my groups are smaller, and even this talk was actually a workshop. So it's sort of designed for 30 people instead of the sea of all of you. So thanks. So the workshop was called 1.5 Degrees of Separation, Interaction Design Education in the Age of the Anthropocene, right? So there's a lot of complicated words there, and I'll try and go through them. That little heart is where we are now, and that blue is where the water will rise to. So it's good that Fitbit is making, I think, like you can swim now and measure how many strokes you've done, because you're probably going to need it. So it's maybe in a way it's less of a talk and more of a question, and so I just wanted to sort of maybe bring you through some of the questions that I've had, and also maybe some of the things that I'm discovering along the way. And I think that actually the other two speakers have already done this job for us, but I might bum you out some more, and I think that's okay, because I actually think that a little bit of depression goes a long way to making the world a better place, and I'll come back to that. So here's an example of Dinosaur experience design, and it didn't go so well. And so my question was, well, what is human-centered extinction design, right? And we're sort of on our way. So since the Industrial Revolution, we've managed to dispatch 3 species of mammals, 113 species of birds, 23 species of amphibians and reptiles, 23 species of fish, about 100 species of invertebrates, and over 350 species of plants. And that's about 1,000 to 10,000 times faster than the way we've been doing that before the Industrial Revolution, right? So we're efficient. And then the question is sort of like, well, why are we so efficient? And I think it's because it's good business. We make money doing it, a lot of it. And John Fullerton, if you know this book, Regenerative Capitalism, I would encourage you to read it. It's a pretty deep analysis of that sort of thing. And then how are we doing it? Well, we have this mechanism called global warming, right? And so we're sort of heating up the planet slowly in these sort of nearly insignificant amounts. This is probably 68 degrees now. If we raise this 2.7 degrees Fahrenheit to 70 point something degrees, right? Like the worst that would happen is that we would take off a jacket. But when we do that to the planet, Fitbit sinks. And my house too. I live in the Mission, and Mission Creek goes all the way there. So I'm also underwater. So we're going to hit that temperature pretty likely by 2040. We're on our way. It's unless we cut, I think, our emissions by 75% tomorrow, we're not going to miss that target. What's more alarming is that we probably will also hit the next target, which is the one we're all trying to avoid, which is 2 degrees Celsius or 3.6 degrees Fahrenheit by 2100. And my house is somewhere over here. So it's going to get really wet. And the impact on the Bay Area is pretty catastrophic. So there's some great maps out there, and you can take a look at that. And then we have people like this, right? James Imhoff, who brought that snowball into the Senate and said, you know, there's snow out there. It's unseasonably cold for February, and there is no global warming. And so maybe as designers, we're just too good at designing things, and that's why we're in this predicament. So I was at the workshop, I was saying that design professors were the problem. So maybe some of us can relate to that, right? But maybe the appropriate way to shift that for you is to say that you are the problem. And I'll explain why. I wore my black pants today because black pants are the thing that I think we could take a quick poll, but I think it's something like 75 to 80%. And it's probably the most toxic color that you can dye your clothes in. And when you do that, and you do that at low cost, then you get things like this, where people dump the 20 liters per black t-shirt of contaminated dye water into the rivers. It turns entire rivers red for weeks on end. And then we have this, right? We make better and better televisions and smart speakers and computers, and every time we do that, we say, oh, I'll just e-waste this old computer and I'll buy the new one, and I've done my share because I've recycled. And then we come to find out that about 50 million tons of e-waste in 2017 were lying somewhere in Ghana, and nobody really knew what to do with that. So recycling isn't enough. So what are the kind of systems that we could come up with to maybe compensate for that, right? To sort of not do that. So designers, I think, also can be the solution, right? So this is my call to you, and I'm also interested in developing this further with you. And I want to base these last 4 minutes, hopefully we'll go through it, but we're all running out of time, and so am I. But this is based on Ezio Manzini, and if you don't know about him, please do look him up. And there's some strategies that we could look at. So the first one is enabling systems, making alternatives available. This is a kind of Airbnb for refugees. So you can register with this platform, and you can say that you're willing to house a migrant for a period of time in your house, right? And so that achieves a couple of different things. One of them is that the right-wing rise of parties in Europe that were predicated on 600,000 migrants coming to Germany might not happen in the same way if people actually lived with those people, right? Like if you actually lived with refugees, climate refugees, we're gonna have millions of them soon enough. Maybe they're not the other, maybe they're just your neighbor. We could think of other systems like this, which allows you to pay for your BART ticket with recycled bottles. We could think about favorable environments. So instead of designing solutions, making them available, we could create places where other people could come up with solutions. So Sunday Streets in San Francisco, for example, is a place where you take an area, you close it off to traffic, and then other people can do things like roller skate and teach dancing. You could create a place like the Omni Commons in Oakland. You could host organizations there, for example, the Counterculture Lab, and then the Counterculture Lab could help invent open source insulin. They're doing that right now. Help them out if you're interested in bio. You could create a map like this called Falling Fruit, which maps all of the fruity, the edible tree types in San Francisco, also other non-edible types, and creates a little dot. So you can see that we're not so blessed over here, but as you go over into this area, you see some more. We'll come back to that, hopefully. You could design systems that teach people skills. The San Francisco Bike Kitchen, the Santa Cruz Bike Church, for example, teaches people how to design their own bikes, how to fix their own bikes. Some of my students are working with me in the kinesiology department to rebuild parts of teaching skeletons and then to donate them to local high schools. So everybody's learning how to 3D model, how to 3D print, and then do something in the environment. You could perform radical solutions. So you could decide that rather than building platforms or places, you could take the matter into your own hands. So these three women are the sort of the core of the people that designed that famous pussy hat, right? And so it all kind of started because Jana had an accident and she couldn't be at the march, and she said, I really want to be there. And then she learned how to knit with Krista Sue, and then Kat Cole created a pattern, and then they basically took over that march. We could have some guerrilla interventions. So these soft barriers were erected one night by a group of bicyclists that are also known as the guerrilla bicycle lane movement. So they do that all over the world, and they just go to certain streets at night and they paint in bicycle lanes where they don't exist. Interesting thing, the city of San Francisco thought this was such a good idea that they made them permanent. Right? The guerrilla Grafters, which I'm a founding member of and I work with, We find fruit trees in the city that are sterile ornamental fruit trees, like ornamental cherries and pears, which are many of them here, right? Because they're nice to look at and they have flowers. We teach people in that neighborhood how to graft fruiting branches into those trees so that those become producing trees. And then, of course, we have Greta Thunberg, who at 15 was so depressed at this vision of the world being sold off piecemeal and destroyed, that she said, I can't go to school anymore. I'm going to go in front of the state house in Stockholm, and I'm going to sit here, because that's the only thing that's left to do. And last March 15th, on Friday, 1.4 million young people skipped school in 123 countries and demanded that the world should change. Spontaneous Intervention was a platform that made space to collect all of these sort of activities and to give a voice to these interventions, right? So giving the voices is also something that is in the purview of designers. So 5 very quick approaches to how design might change if you take your future serious. I'm running out of time because I think we're running out of time. Let's think about different futures that we want to create for ourselves. And I think one of the slides wasn't there, but I wanted to sort of leave a term for you because I think everybody's leaving a term for you. So I want to leave a term for you that's sadly not in the slide, and that's called alongsideness. And we can talk more about what that is, right? Like, what does it mean to be what does it mean to exist and to design alongside of other organisms that have a claim to this planet? What if we design alongside trees and fungi and microorganisms? How does our practice change? Thank you.
Thanks so much, Ian.